this first meeting to order. This is the Atlanta ReDevelopment Commission meeting tonight. And appreciate each one that's come out. John Pfeiffer's absent this evening. I received a text that he's not going to be able to attend, so just to let everyone know. Our first order of business tonight is to appoint a president and I believe vice president. And was there a secretary also, Robin?
Yep.
Secretary. So I will open the floor for nominations for president this evening. Someone would like to nominate president for the Redevelopment Commission. Am I permitted to make a nomination? I know in the council meeting I'm not, but I'll nominate Pam Van Hook as president of the Development Commission.
And I'll nominate Jody as vice president.
Well, you gotta,
Oh, you gotta vote
Yeah.
on first? Oh,
well,
okay.
get a,
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
I nominate Pam.
I'll second the motion.
Will you second?
Okey doke.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have a motion for the vice president. Toby, did you?
Yeah, I nominate Jody.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And secretary, is that correct? I'd like to nominate John Bench as secretary.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I assume those responsibilities will be that as president, you'll conduct the meetings of that commission. And do you know, Jim or Robin, how often that it's required that we meet?
As needed.
As needed. And what are some things that dictate a need? I guess would be my next question.
The creation of this TIF area, if that's what you elect to do, will have another meeting required
Okay.
and a public hearing. We can go through that here in a second.
Okay.
Other than that, the first meeting that you'll have every year, whenever that is. So when we get into calendar year 18, whenever you have the first meeting, you would organize and elect officers.
Okay.
Okay, but whether that occurs in January or March, it doesn't really matter. So the commission will meet as needed if there are redevelopment areas to be created, right, or amendments to the plan, or if there's a use of the funding. So somebody's coming, gonna locate downtown, is looking for an incentive or some type of assistance that would come before the commission, right, which are kind of rare. And then the only other need would be typically in June, maybe. And we'll talk about this a little more, but each year, as you collect increment, right, which is a funding source that you receive from the TIF area, you have to make a statement whether or not you're going to retain that increment that's coming to you, or if you're going to allow that assessed value to flow to the underlying taxing entities. And we'll go through that, but that's a budgetary thing that you're required to do. So you'll look at the increment that you have and the commitments that you've made and say, we need to retain it all. So you would make a positive statement saying, we're retaining all of our increment for the next calendar year. And then we would notify the county auditor that we're retaining the increment, so that when she gives Robin and the schools and the township their assessed value, she has the proper calculation. So if you meet after these first 2 meetings this year, twice a year, you know, unless there's activity that dictates. Otherwise, I would say twice a year.
Okay.
So is this resolution next on the agenda? Is that where we're
We
at?
don't, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, whatever order we need to go in.
Well, no, so let's talk about why we're here now that we're established. The idea that Robin had presented some time back was, you know, there's some things going on downtown and some improvements being made. And there may also be some needs for the town to fund some additional improvements potentially over time. And how do we, with the limited budget of the town, do that? So the idea was, hey, we could create an economic development area, or TIF area, they're simultaneous in term. But we could create an area downtown so that somebody has a building here in town and they make improvements to it. The increased taxes that are generated from the improvements made to that building, by the increased assessed value, the taxes paid on that increased value could be captured by this commission and held, and then used for the benefit of the area that we designate. So,
Is there a time limit on the amount of time we're allowed to hold that before we?
before you
spend
do something
Yeah,
with it,
yeah.
if you haven't issued debt associated with it, there's no time limit,
Okay,
okay? So I did this the other day at a presentation, and people got really impressed, because they said it was really simple, so I'm gonna try to keep it simple. So this is, let's say, the downtown area. Say we draw a map, and this is kind of roughly the representation of town, let's say. And we want to designate this part of downtown as our TIF. Okay, so we have a distinct border that says these parcels that encompass this piece is a TIF area. So what happens with this action that we take tonight and we'll ratify later in the calendar year, but before year end, the assessed value for all the property that's within this area is frozen. So whatever's here currently assessed as of January 1, 2017, the taxes that are generated on that base value, okay, the stuff that's here today, those taxes go to the town, the township, the library, the school corporation, the county. Everybody gets paid on that piece. If they turn around and high-tech props, we make improvements, right? We put a building up, a new building. The taxes on this improvement, right, that are generated, get captured.
Okay.
And the redevelopment commission gets the taxes on this improvement. And then we have that to spend to serve and benefit the area. Now, serve and benefit are, and I kind of outlined it in the plan, it's all encompassing. It's road improvements, drainage, street lights. If we were gonna do a facade program for people to enhance, if we were gonna put benches in, if we were gonna do downtown planters or curbs and sidewalks or whatever, as long as we're serving or benefiting this area, then we can spend that money. If we have a lot of increment that's coming in, right, then we could issue debt.
okay.
And then we could use the increment over time to pay the debt. When you do that, you've now set a time limit on how long this district lasts, because it's 25 years from the time that you sell debt.
Okay,
If we don't sell debt, say we go 5 years just letting natural growth occur, and then 5 years from now we issue debt, it's 25 years from that point in time. Then the district collapses. Now, when the district collapses, what happens is, remember the base, all the taxes generated from this base are being paid to the school and everybody else. This money now that's getting collected, the AV, goes to the base. And so it all goes back, the assessed value gets released back to the town and the county and the library and the school corporation. And because of levy control, right, when you go through your budget, you have more assessed value, the tax rates go down. Okay, so the benefit is, over time, once the improvements are made, right, people will benefit from a lower tax rate when the districts collapse because we've grown the assessed value.
Now, do we have an option down the road to change the location of that TIF?
You don't change the location of the TIF, but you can create others.
So you can add on?
So you can add on to it. And we'll go through the same process that we're gonna start tonight each time that you make a change. And we can have a TIF area that's downtown, and then we can decide there's another area that needs to be created over by the highway or some other part of town. And so you could have multiple areas.
Is there a limit to how many you can add?
No. No. After a while, they become unwieldy, right? And the auditor gets really mad because she has to account for all these separately. So when she hears that you're doing a TIF, she's already mad about the 33 TIF areas that are in Carmel, right? And the 17 that are in Noblesville, and the you know, ones that are in Westfield, and you know, we've created a couple in Sheridan. And so now she's gonna hear, really, Atlanta? Are you kidding me? Right? They're creating an area too. That's the conversation that we'll have at the end of the day. But she'll understand it's just one, not gonna be 20. I mean, she goes crazy. They go crazy in Carmel because of the number of areas.
So Jim, if I understand you correctly, this is for 25 years,
or longer.
or longer
if we
you
don't have debt.
If you don't have debt,
Right.
it can hang on infinitely
Right.
without debt.
So if we
Okay.
had like a major or something big, we could issue debt and then
You
make
could.
payments with it.
Right.
Not that
Because what's gonna happen, what will predicate debt is the amount of growth that you have. So if it wasn't downtown, but let's say it was on the outskirts of town, and somebody was coming in and putting in a manufacturing facility or a small commercial business, and they were gonna have several $1 million worth of assessed value that you could capture, right? And they needed sewer improvements, or they needed drainage, or they needed a road cut, right? Or we needed to do some improvement. We could issue debt based on what they're investing. So your tax rate is all of what, $2.30 total? Right, your rate's like 91 cents, but the whole tax rate is $2.31. So for every $1 million of assessed value that's new to the area, $1 million, generates $23,000 a year in incremental revenue that the commission would have. So a $5 million project would generate about $100,000 a year in increment. So if you had a $5 million investment coming from, and I'm talking big numbers, but I need to talk big numbers in order to talk about the potential for the leveraging. But if you get somebody that does $100,000 worth of business, you're gonna walk away with, you know, $2,000, $2,300 in new taxes, a new increment that comes to you that can be used to serve or benefit the area. So when you start looking at sidewalks, curbs, street lights, what have you.
The housing addition that's going on out here, before the houses are being
You can't capture off of houses.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
What we're capturing is
business.
business, industrial,
Nice try.
non-homestead, so if we had like
Okay.
apartments,
Okay, so the area out there that might be developed for business on 19
could be
could be.
an area,
And
yes.
Okay.
What about what's few businesses we have now, are they under a grandfather clause or?
Well, remember, they're right now, everything they've done prior to the beginning of this calendar year is in this space. So we don't,
Okay, so they're already.
right, so if they made improvements last year, and it was assessed last year, it's in this space. If they've done anything since January of this year, we intend to capture that.
A lot's gone on Main Street, hasn't it? Or when
Well, I don't
was
know how
there?
much the improvements have started yet. They're coming.
Yeah,
A lot-
that's
Right.
true.
A lot of
Okay.
things have been bought on
Yeah.
Main Street this year.
That's true.
So the process, in a nutshell,
Yeah,
and I've given you a calendar, I think, that actually has hard dates put in it so that we can get this moving. So this commission meets today and they pass a declaratory resolution. And that's the resolution that Manny's prepared. And the declaratory resolution says to the world, hey, we're about to create a TIF area. And that TIF area has a map, and Robin started a map that kind of outlines the general area that we would look to set up as the economic development area. And says, here's the parcels that we intend to kind of look at and establish this base.
And that can be changed.
And we
Now,
can
mind
change
you, I
that
just have to
between
get
now-
something to them.
Right. We have the option to change that between tonight and the time that we take final action.
So what I sent him was that was not, okay, use the terms for me. This is the TIF area,
The economic development area,
but what's the other one?
the allocation.
The allocation, okay. You're gonna have to explain that.
So there are technically two areas, and a lot of times they're the same, sometimes they are different. So when we create an economic development area, and we do that because we say, here is the area that we intend to benefit from this increment that we're gonna capture. So maybe we wanna spend money in the residential areas that are close to downtown. We have an intersection that needs to be improved, or we're gonna do sidewalks so that people can come from the homes into the downtown to make it more walkable. Well, we can't capture the residential properties, right? So we wouldn't want to include them in the district, but we include them in the economic development area. So we have a bigger map. This is the town. Maybe we say this is the allocation area, right? So it's not all the town, but it's a smaller piece. But we want to capture the businesses or the commercial growth, and that's this. So we have two kind of maps. We have the economic development area, and that says within this area, we can spend the money generated from this growth so that, and this is a Luke Kinley kind of thing, he wants to make sure the increment that's being generated is serving or benefiting the area. So and it can be the same size, right? We could say this is the area and the allocation area. But then we can't, it's harder for us to spend money over here on this sidewalk. So why not just make the other area a little bigger? So typically that economic development area is slightly bigger than the allocation area, so that we can get into kind of the residential fringe. If we're gonna do street improvements, street light improvements, we have drainage issues we need to solve, or sidewalks. That's typically why we would expand out a little bit to do that. So tonight we kind of set the boundaries preliminarily, and we tell the world through the adoption of this resolution, we're creating a TIF area, or an economic development area. That then, this resolution, which would have attached to it the map and the plan, goes to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission will review that to make sure that the plan lines up with the comprehensive plan. There's nothing in here that's anything outside of your comprehensive plan. So they're not, having great debate about this, but other than it complies. From there, it goes to the town council. And the town council says, yes, we're aware that this area is about to be created and we agree. And so they'll have a resolution and consent to the creation of the area. Then we will prepare for the commission a tax impact statement that will be prepared and sent to all of the underlying taxing entities. So the county, the township, the school corporation, the town, the library, the solid waste district. That's the county solid waste district has a tax rate, so they get a copy. It's bizarre, but they do. they'll all get a copy of this tax impact statement that will say, hey, the town of Atlanta is about to create, through its redevelopment commission, a TIF area. And here is the impact of the creation of that area. And there's a public hearing that's gonna be held on this date and this time. And if you have concerns or wanna voice your comments, attend. This body will meet and hold a public hearing. You'll take comment from the public if there is any. And then after that, you'll pass a confirmatory resolution, which basically says, we declared we were gonna create a TIF area. We went to the planning commission, we went to the town council, we held a public hearing, we notified the taxing entities. We're good. And so now, be it created. And then we send that to the auditor and we've established an area. So this base date gets created at January 1st, 2017 by the action that we take tonight. And the calendar kind of lines up with existing meetings that are already held with the planning commission, I think, and the town council. Planning commission was as needed, right? Mm-hmm. So we would have the planning commission meet before the next town council meeting, briefly, to pass a resolution. The council passes its resolution. We do the advertising and the mailing 10 days prior to the public hearing, and we meet again on the 12th of December to adopt the confirmatory resolution, and we're done.
So the amount of money we're talking annually is based mostly on the county assessor's assessment. And of course, that's on permanent fixtures. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be, if you put a temporary thing, I don't know how they would assess that. And consequently, like the shelter house over here, that's assessed every year. Mm-hmm. If we decided as the town board to tear it down, for example, then you just wouldn't be assessed for it anymore, correct? Right.
Well, the difference is if the town owns the town shelter, right, mm-hmm. It's tax exempt.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it's, but say you sold the town, say you sold the shelter to somebody else and they came in and bought it and they're taxable. That's automatic growth because that went from zero to up. Yeah. So a lot of times when municipal buildings get converted or parkland's abandoned and it's developed, or school buildings, old school buildings are sold, right? There's zero assessment, and then all of a sudden somebody buys it for a public concern. Churches or VFW halls that are abandoned and closed, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and buys the old church and makes it a bed and breakfast or something. Right now, all of a sudden you have growth.
We've got lots of potential for that here. We've got a lot of empty buildings.
You know, the thing is, you get this created and set up now downtown, and then if growth does occur, then you'll benefit from that. And if people come in and want to do things and need a little bit of enhancement to do it, then you have it already set up as a tool in your toolbox that you can use. Rather than have somebody come in and say, hey, I'd like to do this, what can you help me with? And you go, well, I don't have anything. But we can get you something in 60 or 90 days. This is already set up. And that was the idea of doing it now and putting it in place, because you'll capture the small growth that's naturally occurring, and it'll give you a tool in your toolkit to move forward. That's TIF in a nutshell.
That's a big nut.
The old dentistry building down here, you know.
It's not included.
That's not included in the TIF area. Because I'm thinking somewhere down the line.
It has to be contiguous, doesn't it?
We can get there if we need to, because we could run down a street. Right, so we could have this area and then come down a street and have another little area off of it.
Because, okay, so we would have to,
Extend it.
okay, Fred, you know me when I look at maps.
Well, what if somebody?
I can't find the dental clinic over here.
Oh, Adams. Go across Adams there.
It's right. It's right here.
Adams and Walnut.
Right here. This parcel right here.
The one that looks like a baseball diamond.
Here, draw it on mine, and then we'll show Jim.
Okay, let me get my bearings back here. Yeah, it's right here.
It's right here.
Walnut,
Looks
John,
like a
and Adams. Yeah.
baseball diamond.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's it right there.
So what winds up happening is this line gets extended down the
Extend it
street.
and go
We
around,
just come down the street, right?
right?
And then we pick up that parcel wherever it is, like this.
It's the whole baseball diamond right
So,
there.
yeah, so whatever that is. right?
Well,
So you
that's
just-
what it looks like.
You just come right down the street and then pick
Yeah.
up
Okay,
that
so then
parcel.
next to it, around the corner is the town garage. Should we include that then? No.
Unless you're gonna sell the town garage.
Well, no,
No.
that's right,
No.
because if we can't do improvements down there, we
Yeah.
wouldn't, okay, so, that's a good idea, Toby. To get
Yeah,
that.
because
Oh,
that's
well
an
then-
empty building sitting there
Yeah.
and,
Now, suppose somebody bought that for a residential purpose, would that?
well, but they have to get okay, cause it's a
But,
business.
so let's say if they did, then it's residential property and the improvements, you just don't capture you don't capture it.
Well, then can we run from this little baseball diamond up 19 to where the blacksmith and the car dealership and that is?
Well, you could either do that, or you could just take that area
Okay.
and create a secondary.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
cause there's
Yeah,
cause there's,
on that corner out there.
the whole corner right there is all,
The storage
Businesses,
place, Dollar Gen,
storage.
yeah, the storage place. Dollar
If
General.
there's
yeah.
gonna be more,
Well,
right? So if you have 3 businesses in a row that are already established, and they're gonna stay for a while, but there's vacant land next to it that could be developed, you want the vacant land. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily want the 3 businesses
oh,
that are already there.
gotcha, okay,
so it'd be the land behind it.
yeah, I don't know. Or between Dollar General going north on 19.
Right. So
know,
probably
that's
the
something to
biggest
think about.
decision that you have tonight is where you want the general boundaries to start at for capture. Because once we have that, we can always, from the map that you look at tonight, and we identify the properties, we can always come down between now and December 12th. But once we start tonight, we can't add on without starting over again. If that makes sense.
So up around the dollar store and all that store,
The
that's
housing,
no longer considered commercial zoning, that's all residential zoning.
all residential.
Yeah.
So there's more growth can come in.
South of the dollar store is residential, north of the dollar store.
Hey man, how you doing? Good, and you?
Well,
Well, they're already there, the dollar store is there, the storage thing is there,
Well, I'm
car
thinking about
dealership,
adding-
right.
And they just added on to the storage place. It's larger.
For sale, well, no, just,
Hey, storage car dealer and all that's not city limits.
Ah, it needs to be out of town limits.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
dollar store is.
Hi guys, sorry.
Hi, Manny. We just talked about it for.
That's alright, that's alright.
But
Why your ears are ringing.
but I think other than the old dental office, right, then the downtown area is probably
Yeah.
the better way to
Yeah.
stick,
yes.
to do that. And so, that's what I would propose as
It makes sense.
the baby step to take.
Yeah.
I'm glad you thought of that, though, Mr. B.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause that's just sitting there empty and hopefully somebody will.
Of course, the evaluation currently is established, so.
Right. But if
moving
somebody
forward-
comes in and makes improvements to that building, right, as they occupy it, then you're gonna see an increase in assessed value.
Yeah, capture that then.
And whether it happens next year or the year after, depending on when the assessor gets to it, is all a timing thing, right? What you wanna make sure of is when you see improvements that are happening, that the assessor knows about it, right? And gets the hint, because assessors in general aren't all that keen on making sure it happens, in the time. So they know stuff happened, in the latter part of the year. They've got 6 months into 18 to kind of get the records right. But if they don't get it, and they get it the first of the following year, it all gets made up, right? They're not concerned about that. We start getting concerned as a redevelopment commission about that, because the sooner the assessment's made, the sooner we can get increment. So we established the base date for this area that we're gonna establish. That's January 1st, 2017. The growth that occurs, I have coughs. So the growth that occurs during 2017, that gets assessed on January 1, 2018, this is what we're gonna capture. But we get this in 2019 when taxes are paid, because it's always a year behind, right? So base date, growth in 17, assessed in 18, paid in 19. So I'm not telling you that next year, in next year's budget, you're gonna have oodles of money. You may get some small, or you won't get anything, because there'll be no growth coming in to pay 18. But you will see money come pay 19.
Okay, constituting, when we talk about constituting growth, what about when you can't claim residential, correct?
Correct.
Right.
What if the residential person turned their store into, or turned their resident
Into a bed and breakfast.
business for profit?
Then you're capturing.
You capture, and we just did that in Sheridan.
Yep.
We amended the plan because they had several residential on there that weren't doing anything. And we basically subbed those out for folks who were residential, but then started doing that exact thing, turned it commercial, and now we're able to capture that. So that's a good question, because that does happen.
Yeah, it's
So-
happened here before.
So you take a house, you split it into a four apartment unit kind of a deal where you're renting it out to 4 people. Now you've got a commercial venture, it's no longer a residential homestead. So it's up, and you get that as increment.
What about, what's his name's mechanic?
You keep asking me.
Yeah, you're doing the math, you're doing the math. I'm just throwing it up in the air for what it's worth, you know, it's.
Oh,
I
Chuck,
forget his name now.
Chuck,
Chuck, yeah. He's business, you know, I mean, I don't know, is he considered in town limits?
I don't know.
He's in town limits, but he's like,
So he's
Like
running like
Indiana
a.
and-
He's
Oh,
a
garage and
professional mechanic.
Yeah, and he's doing stuff in his,
Auto
He
body.
has a
Yeah.
separate building.
Yeah, but he's.
but then is he gonna make improvements to that building over
I
time?
doubt
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Right,
doubt
that
it.
are
Yeah,
gonna
right,
be
good.
measurable.
I don't think.
You know,
he
maybe he
is.
paints it, maybe he puts a new roof on it, but I doubt that he does anything
That was already done.
that's big enough, that's gonna generate the kind of money that you would think.
Well, I keep thinking in my mind that once you set the TIF area,
We can always go back and
it
amend
can't
it.
be altered.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why I'm
Well,
thinking that, but.
you can, right? We can go back and amend it, alter it, and go back out, but we have to go through this same process.
Okay,
of
okay.
We pass a declaratory resolution, we amend the plan, we go to the planning commission, we go to the council, we have a public hearing, we adopt a confirmatory resolution. We have to do all of those steps. So if next year, for whatever reason, after we thought about it, we wanna go add an area to it, to this area, we do it over that same 45-day process. So it's just a matter of going through it. I'm just thinking for the first time,
Right.
rather than arbitrarily draw a map, if you've got ideas of where else we wanna go, let's go get it, let's go get it.
let me ask you this. Now that we're talking about that. Let's say the trailer park is getting ready to add like 50 more. How many units is he gonna add out there, Andy? Mike Link? Like 50
But that's,
more.
is that resident, well,
But is it?
or is
Well-
it business, yeah.
And I mean, that place,
It's also not
that
real
place could
estate.
use
It's not
some
real estate.
improvement.
It's
So-
not real estate.
Yeah.
Those are all
Those are
personal
all
property technically.
personal property to the owner of the trailers, right? It's their personal property. Now, if they had a trailer park and they rented the trailers,
Isn't that what they're doing?
No,
No.
they rent the lots.
They
Some
rent the
of them,
lots,
right?
yes.
And there may be some trailers.
Some of
that
them
may-
are.
Right, that people come in temporarily. But unless it was an all or nothing thing, like if it was all rental, then you've got something that could be captured with a couple of extra steps.
That place could use some improvement.
So then then if, this house across the street.
If they go back to a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, they go back to a bed and breakfast, that is incorporated automatically into the.
Because it's within
Area,
the original
because it's in the
guidelines.
tip area.
Absolutely, it's there, and that's, that's the original purpose, with what's potentially here in downtown. For what advantage, I think,
I said, it's just one more tool in the toolkit that you've got. But the easiest time to establish it is now, before all the activity starts. When it's quiet.
Which
So what
won't
do
be
they do
for
right now?
long.
What's our
That's
next,
the-
what's our next step here then?
Well, now, you have a declaratory resolution in front of you to be considered. I'm not gonna steal Manny's thunder, because Manny's gonna, but this document incorporates both the plan, and you'll see on the first page of the plan, at the bottom, I've talked about the things that could be used, that we could use this increment for, and there's no priority to it. Construction and extension of water lines, sewer lines, drainage, roads, sidewalks, curbs, acquisition or purchase of emergency equipment. That's police cars, fire trucks, associated equipment. You know, the whole, if it fits in the realm, it fits in the realm. Demolition of buildings, purchase of real property if we needed to, incentive to potential and existing businesses located in the area. And sometimes we've done this in areas like for facade grants. We've done that, and to enhance employment opportunities through workforce development.
Job training programs, stuff
So, the idea is you wanna make the plan as broad as you can make it, so that when you get an idea of what you wanna spend money on, can you fit one of these 9 categories? If the answer to that is yes,
Done this a long time ago.
Fire barn's in this picture, this drawing, right?
Yes,
Talking about being bad with maps, I was just making sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
like. And the use of the money is a little bit broader than that.
yeah,
It touches and concerns the TIF, which has been refined a little bit over the last couple of years, but if it touches and concerns the TIF, you can spend money on it. If it fits within the plan.
we've talked about 2 areas. I think we're gonna have 2 boundaries, the economic development area boundary, which may include some residential kind of adjacent to the downtown area, and then just the allocation area being downtown. Because it makes it easier for us to get,
Yeah, right.
to serve or benefit
Right.
if we take the allocation area out a little bit farther. Or take the economic development area out a little bit farther. So they're not gonna be coterminous.
And is that reflected in the maps?
I will be.
Okay. So that will need to be amended.
It will be.
Reference to it in the declaratory.
I think typically what we've done when we start in the declaratory is, we've got a map generally that we've talked about, that there's agreement, then we clean it up
Yeah.
for the documentation part, because then I'll take those parcels, because I'll need to identify the parcels for the tax impact statement, and then we'll have it all for the declaratory. It just won't be any greater, or the confirmatory won't be any greater than what we
That one was
proposed tonight.
presented.
So they need to decide the allocation area, right?
Yes, and if the boundaries are in the downtown area, what I'll call the commercial district, plus you wanna go down and pick up this,
Dental
the
clinic.
dental clinic,
Right.
then
the
we'll
old-
make the map reflect that.
Okay. Okay.
We can deal with your intent. And so, now it's the resolution.
Yeah, so we need to make one change in the resolution to reflect that process. We can change it a little bit, but just to say that there are maps, you know, they're gonna be presented to the council, or to the commission. So what this does, this kind of starts the process. You've formed the RDC, you've selected your officers, I think. Okay. So now this is essentially taking everything that Jim has talked about and putting it into a single document that consolidates everything you want to do and starts the process, with the goal being a confirmatory resolution that looks a lot like this and references this, that will then establish the economic development area and then the allocation area for the TIF. So this is essentially the first shot in starting the process.
So we don't have to make a decision as to the exact location of this tonight? Or or do you wanna wait till we get this map drawn out? And
I'd
then-
rather have the map as big as you think it needs to be tonight. If you wanna make the map smaller, as we go forward, we can always make it smaller. But once we've set the general boundaries of what we're going to capture, if we try to go back, if we come back in 2 weeks and say, or a month and say, we wanna add this, we gotta start.
Then you would have to do a whole new territory. So,
We would start the process over again. But I'm not sure for this initial area, if we're talking about downtown, the central commercial district, and the old dentistry building, if you really have anything other than that jumps out at you that says, oh, yes, we have to have that.
We really don't, I mean, across the street is the church over here, but it's been there 150 years, it's not going to become a business.
right.
Is any of this property that's empty up here on the railroad track eligible for development?
That's town property, other than
Above
Roselle's.
Cane's, above Meridian, is there anything open up there towards the bottle shop? Behind Bozelzio and all
That's all
that?
Roselle's,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't see no room for the bottle pub to
Okay.
even grow.
all right.
And just to keep my
No,
mind straight.
that's okay.
If, there are a couple of what I consider pretty large lots here in town. Fred has one, for
I
example.
did, that's 5
And
acres.
over here on the other end of town, there's another large. Now suppose 5, 10, 15 years down the road, Fred decides he has an offer from a manufacturing company or something.
Wants to put in,
And Fred wants to, make a profit and he sells it. Now, does that automatic, even though that's not included in the TIF area now,
we can create a TIF area.
so there's
around it.
nothing
We can
to
create a
stop
separate
us
one.
from.
There's nothing stops you from doing
Okay,
more
so-
later.
okay.
So this isn't a,
That's a
hey,
good thought,
good.
that's a good thought, cause you'll see in a lot of different places, they'll have 5 or 6 TIF areas depending on what the development is and what the need
Okay.
is.
and the reason you don't want to include like everything right now is because let's say we get real growth in the downtown area and we have real money. And so we decide to issue bonds and now we've started the 25-year clock.
Okay.
And 10 years from now, Fred's property wants to be developed, or right? If we keep that separate, then there's a new clock that could start
So
on that property.
if you get wind of something, you can hurry up and set up a TIF and then capture, okay, so we don't have, yeah.
Right? Because the
okay.
whole idea is people that make these areas too big to start,
Yeah.
and then they issue debt, and now they're on a clock, and they're 7 years in, or they're 8 years in, and now somebody else comes in and wants to develop.
Yeah.
Well, now you go to figure out how much you can leverage on that new development, and you're like, well, wait a minute, my area expires in 18 years. And from the time they break ground and start construction to the time they get it assessed is 2 years. And so I've got 2 years less, and now I don't have the full potential. And I've shortchanged myself. So I wouldn't start from the beginning, but we always have the
small
opportunity
and then let it grow.
to pick up others when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't a one-time only. Right, so we have the opportunity, it's just going through this same process that I outlined each time. Which really, because you meet as needed, can be as short as, we're gonna start tonight, we're gonna be done within 30 days. 28 days from now, we're done, if everything happens according to Hoyle.
The only thing too, concerning the TIF area that stays permanent is that it has to stay within the town city limits.
You have to be
You
within.
can't go out of city limits
Correct.
for a TIF.
Correct, unless you somehow, you annex another part of the town, or you merge, or whatever, then you can kind of play
Yeah.
it. But yes, generally.
If
within
you
the
really
town.
wanted to do it, you could deal with the county redevelopment commission. Ask them to establish an area and to turn it over to you
Yeah.
to run. And you can do those agreements, those are a nightmare to do. Because
County
if,
doesn't do anything for us.
right, because the county would say,
So
well, wait a
take
minute,
our money.
that's gonna happen in the unincorporated part of the county, we're gonna take that money. But you can get outside the corporate boundaries. it's just really,
Well,
really.
the only thing I was thinking about, Jim, is down on Central, there's a huge field, a farmer farms that, and you know how farmers are, and I was just thinking maybe, I probably won't see it, but maybe someday that somebody will build some kind of a plant there, you know.
When you see the for sale
That's
signs
good.
go up, you
And
create a
that's
TIF
right,
district
right
and
out to the edge of the city limits there, and that's why I asked you if, you know,
And that farm's within the,
it's out of the city limits.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
I live on one side, and they're on the other side of the street, which is out of the city
got
limits.
it.
And I don't know enough about the county's redevelopment area and the areas that they've established in the county. But let's say the county's got areas that are established, and I know they do, with a property tax back up
Yeah.
on those areas. This is the county. So the county's area,
We don't have a,
their economic development area, their jurisdiction for the county, is the entire county, except for those communities that have redevelopment commissions. So if they've done a property tax back deal and that tax gets called on, they tax all the parcels in the county except those communities that have redevelopment commissions of their own. So Noblesville, Fishers, Carmel, Westfield, Sheridan are all exempt from that tax rate. So by establishing the commission in an area, you've kind of protected yourself from the county's exposure if one of their deals go bad. Just as an aside.
That's a good point.
what's our,
So can I see one of those on it? Thank you.
The base assessment date is January 1st,
17.
2017.
That's right. So- Yeah.
Did you have reference to a map? Because everything refers to Exhibit A, which
I
is the
did,
plan.
I just added exhibit B.
Okay.
It was here, for some reason it got taken out, so that's why I wanted to. Okay, so this one, and I'll pretty it up after everybody signs it. Maybe just, take a motion to adopt the declaratory resolution as presented, or if you wanna modify it, now's the time. That would start the process.
We elected officers, so Hannah, as the president, will ask for a motion.
can we, get a motion to approve resolution R 11-2017-01?
I make a motion to accept it.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Oh, any opposed?
I think we do.
Okay.
If you just sign that one, I'll.
So really, Toby should be doing the minutes for this meeting.
If he was elected secretary.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't,
I'm gonna start throwing everything. Where are you?
Underneath Fred.
So Toby, if you're secretary, you would attest at the bottom left there.
Okay.
I'm off the hook for this one, y'all.
Y'all.
So when you get those changes, then can you shoot me
Yes.
a copy?
I'll shoot you a clean one with the signatures.
So the
And-
next date that we're gonna meet is on the 12th of December, which I think is just prior to your council meeting. That day, right?
The next time,
Wait.
the next time we meet is the,
The redevelopment commission will meet, is on the 12th.
Yes.
for the public
Yes.
hearing.
Yes.
Right, there's a planning commission meeting on the 28th.
28th, yeah, we'll have a
And the
plan.
town council on the 28th. So
Correct.
the stars lined up for us. We get the planning commission meet, they adopt their resolution.
Yes.
Council
He
adopts
has
their
no idea
resolution.
how the stars line up.
What's the actual
Am I
date?
supposed to attach
Yeah.
a copy of this?
Whatever map you determine.
December.
be attached
Our
to
next
that.
meeting is on the 12th.
So if you could,
Next
petition, I can just put all in one piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
at
We'll
our,
have a planning commission meeting
On the 28th.
on the 28th,
at 6
I gotta
p.m.
redraw this anyway.
yeah, you
And
can
the
be there.
council, and then the council meeting at 7.
Yep,
You more or less adopt identical resolution.
And for that meeting, we'll have two primary items of action. There'll be a public hearing that will be held, so you'll open the floor and ask for comments from the public on the tax impact statement and the declaratory resolution. And then there'll be a confirmatory resolution to be adopted.
Okay.
Then once that's done, the area is set, and we'll notify the DLGF and the county auditor, and you're done.
For those of you that just walked in, we're working on our TIF district. You know, we talked about that last meeting. We're starting that process tonight, getting that all lined up.
So,
Wonderful.
who typically would remonstrate the school with that?
Well, yes, I mean, they might, but what we'll do, what I tend to do is I'll reach out to the school prior to them getting the tax impact statement to make sure that the superintendent is aware of what's going on and the impact. And then he can run it by the school board to see if they have any questions. It's rare that it happens. I can't think of the last time I've had somebody show up at a creation of a TIF district in 10 years. But that's because we make it a point to meet with the school and talk to them so they're aware. As a courtesy, because if anybody believes that they're impacted, it's the school. That's all I have.
Any other questions?
I think so.
If there's nothing else, you can adjourn.
Oh, I guess I need a motion to adjourn this redevelopment commission meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
The second.
1 second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.